Well, the National Employers Association of South Africa's CEO, Gerhard Papenfus, says the Eskom crisis has a far-reaching impact and could only be addressed if drastic measures to root out corruption and fraud are introduced in South Africa. Now, let's discuss this further with him. Gerhard Papenfus joins us now via Zoom. Sir, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Now, before we get to some of the root causes of corruption and fraud, the Western Cape, as you've just heard, has described the tariff increase as outrageous and out of touch with the country's economic conditions. What's your reaction to it?
Well, it's 10%, a bit more than 10% above the inflation rate. And this will cause a ripple effect through all sectors and all levels of the economy. And the consumers will feel it on all levels. It will increase the cost of each and every item utilized in this economy. And one can resign yourself to the fact that, what can Eskom do? They've got to pay this. The point is, and it's just been made by the Premier of the Western Cape, now that it's increased, what has changed? Has the corruption changed? The fraud and corruption? Has the management really taken this thing on to root out corruption? No, nothing. Things will continue as usual. So it's a higher cost and we won't get anything in return. So it is highly unsatisfactory. And I think we've come to the point where we must say, no, this is not good enough. We must protest against this in a constitutional, lawful manner. The fact that we resign ourselves to this and just accept it is no longer viable. Government must feel, and all involved must feel that they can no longer, and the criminals must feel they can no longer stay in this environment, continue what they're doing. The public we are tired of this.
Now, in fact, earlier I was speaking to an economist who was basically saying, an energy expert rather, who was basically saying, what do we expect Eskom to do? I mean, they're dealing with rising costs and their operations, of course, dealing with ailing infrastructure. But of course, you are saying that nothing at Eskom will probably be fixed if we don't deal with the drastic measures to root out corruption and fraud. Talk to us about just some of those measures you think need to be introduced within the company first.
Well, first of all, I agree with what he says. I mean, they need more money to sustain this operation. So I agree with that. My problem is, if you look at the tenderpreneurs within Eskom, the price of coal, the price of diesel, all those contracts that you read about, where you pay more for an item. Each item that eventually is utilized is paid more. The bodies that in the supply chain fill their pockets in the process of procurement. This needs to stop. And we hear about the corruption in Eskom for years, but we don't see people taken to task and taken to court and jailed for that. Now leadership can do that. This is a political problem. It is to sort out Eskom is not. I cannot believe. You can solve anything if there's integrity and there's a will to do something. You can do that. But there's not the will or the ability, not the political reserves to take them on and sort them out. The whole thing is corrupt, and the politicians are scared to take these guys on. So, there's just 18% just allow for more money. If the 18% would have gone to the sustaining of the operation, the maintenance, the improvement of the utility, that would have been fine. But 18% won't do that. A portion of that will do that. The rest will go to the pockets of the criminals because they're there. I mean, they tell us that a mafia runs Eskom. Now, as the public, we don't actually know what it means, but it's harsh words. This is happening. So you need to root out corruption. We have, and I've listened to a previous speaker, one of the young people that make comments, we've got huge talent in South Africa. We don't have to import. But if you're a loyal worker, if you're diligent, and if you want to make a difference, you can make a difference. But in an environment where there's fraud and corruption, no honest person can do a job in that environment. If you're honest there, it might cost you your life. So that needs to be rooted out. So South Africa has got a dilemma. We need a tremendously strong leadership in this instance to take these guys on. Because without that, we will simply continue with in this downward spiral, and the public can't take it. We just cannot accommodate it. I just want to mention something. When we talk about stage 4 load shedding, we're talking about an average of 9 hours a day. Now, if you manufacture, and many manufacturing institutions manufacture 24 hours a day. If you're a bakery, and they typically, people that manufacture, or not manufacture, but produce their stuff for 24 hours, the impact of a 9-hour load shedding over a 24-hour is not 9 hours. It is in some cases double that. Because you can't put your stuff prepare your stuff and put it in an oven if you know the load shedding is going to happen in an hour's time or half an hour's time. You can't do that. So you must stop well in advance before the load shedding starts. And then when it starts eventually, when it's over eventually, you need to heat up your ovens. That happens at great cost, electricity-wise, and that takes another hour to prepare and get everything ready. So 9 hours is easily 15 hours, 13 hours. In manufacturing, in steel, plastic, steel manufacturing, 24 hours, I'm told by various role players that it's actually double that for the same reason. Now, that has got a huge impact on the company. What is the impact on the employees that is affected by this?
And in fact, Agri-SA has said that it wants to have an urgent meeting with Eskom, to your point. But you speak about, that country having a dilemma. And of course, the other dilemma is further possible unemployment. The Chamber of Commerce and Industry says that the negative impact of Eskom's stage 6 load shedding, could see South African companies, like you say, cutting staff due to, to the continued rolling blackouts. Now, as a National Employers Association, I'm sure you are concerned about that portion.
Well, that's, of course we are. When you've got hiccups in business accommodates that because you appreciate your employees. And, if there's a break here and there, you say, guys, we'll overcome that. But when you get to this point, you'll have to start cutting back on staff, reduce working hours, whatever is necessary. Now, can you imagine 9 hours a day, it's half a day's production. If you start cutting employee salaries by half, or you retrench half of that. Now, each employee that's currently working in South Africa sustain a number of people, 5 to 10 people. There are people at home that relies on this. The impact on broader society is huge. Now, you think what can happen. There's a point where this whole thing breaks, where society just cannot take it anymore, and you start getting socioeconomic upheaval, unrest. And you don't easily use the word revolution. I mean, this is not. I don't even want to use this word. But when people get desperate. And Eskom is an instrument that can make or break South Africa. And unfortunately, Eskom is currently hurting South Africa, and it touches to a very, very dangerous point. And I think that civil society, and I'm talking about business, in poorer part of society, there are service unrest and so on, and people protest. It is time for business to raise their voice and say this is not good enough, and protest in a different way, lawfully and constitutionally. You know, we can't withhold tax, and it's never, I will never advise people to do that. So that's not on. But there are other ways to protest. We must make it visible that this is not on. We must make it uncomfortable for the criminals in those institutions. Society needs to rise up, but not in a distractive manner. In a very productive, constructive manner, we must say, this is not good for the sake of South Africa. This is patriotism. The fact that we remain quiet on this is not good enough. We just not we don't have a custom of protest. Business don't have that. But there's a time where I think we need to start protesting about it now. I think the fact that in Eskom this is happening is because we remained quiet for too long. We just suck it up and pay and complain a bit and adapt. I think there's a point where we must say, no, we're not doing it anymore.
Yeah, Mr. Papenfus, I think a lot of South Africans at this point in time would definitely agree with you, particularly the point where you say that action needs to be taken by South Africans. I'm afraid that's all the time that we have for this afternoon. Thank you so much for your time, Gerhard Papenfus, the National Employers Association of South Africa, and he is the CEO, saying there that Eskom is an instrument that could make or break this country. So, yeah, very strong words there.